Ladies and gentlemen,
They say the next big thing is here.
the Steve Warnicki Show.
Thank you for the introduction, Brian. Welcome to the program. I am Steve Warnicki. I appreciate you being with us. All things Steve Warnicki at, guess where? SteveWarnicki.com. WARNEKE. Author, speaker, writer, contributor. I am here. And if you like the History Channel and A&E and TED Talks, this is your place to be entertained as well as learn something. These aren't just crazy rants. I'm actually here fulfilling the purpose of repairing the relationship between police officers and the public by educating us all about the things I learned over my 15-year career. So I am a retired Denver police sergeant. And the article we wrote this week on social media at Facebook went berserk. Hundreds of comments on all the different pages and groups that we posted in. And it was talking about the University of Miami football goer, female, who was carried out by multiple police officers. And while she was being carried out, she slapped one of the officers across the face, at which point he hit her pretty hard, appearing to knock her out, and the video went viral. I wrote an article about it defending the police use of force. I mean, I had some criticism for the officers. Tactically speaking, the officers should go back to their departments and see if they can learn something from this and train the department on how better to handle people that are acting up at sporting events in the future rather than carrying them out uncuffed over your heads. I'm not sure that tactically that's a sound maneuver. But it doesn't negate the fact that a grown woman decided to slap the police officer and that he's forced to react to her decision to use force against a peace officer. And so I've been wanting to talk about this. I think I even mentioned it at one of the different podcasts we did, but I've been wanting to talk about use of force in general by police. And some of the things we'll talk about today, the use of force continuum. And I mean, the question that I got asked hands down over my 15-year career the most was, why can't you shoot them in the arms? Why can't you shoot them in the legs? Why can't you shoot the gun out of their hands? Why can't you shoot the knife out of their hands? We're going to finally answer that for everybody. And if that's a question you have, I'm going to answer why it is we don't do that as police officers. The general point of police officers using force is to gain compliance. They want you to comply with what you're supposed to be doing. Another reason for use of force by police is to stop an active threat to themselves or to third parties. And there's lots of different uses of force. There's a use of force continuum. So there's different levels. And believe it or not, some of the things at the bottom is just command presence, just standing there in uniform. And typically you might think about this at like a sports celebration or a parade or something. You've seen police in riot gear standing together in line. That's a display of force to intimidate people into behaving so they don't block traffic and throw things through business windows, breaking glass and light fires and overturn cars and all of the things that I got to see, after different gatherings at downtown Denver. There's verbal commands. That's part of the use of force continuum. Issuing commands. You can go hands-on and you have strikes and arm bars and twist locks, pepper spray, baton use, less than lethal stuff like tasers and bean bags. And then you have deadly force. Usually we think of deadly force, we think of a firearm. But deadly force isn't just a firearm. Deadly force can be choking somebody. So one of the examples that I like to use is the stop sticks that police throw out during a pursuit with the little spikes in them that flatten the tires. If police throw that out during a motorcycle who's running, a motorcycle pursuit, and a motorcycle runs them over, like in our department, that was considered deadly force. Because if you flatten the tires of a motorcycle at high speeds, they might die. So it's not just handguns, but it's the use of force that's likely to cause death when it's used. There's this whole continuum that police have to choose from. And I think a lot of the things people don't think about is we've all agreed on behaviors in order to be able to live in this prosperous society. We have to behave in certain ways. There's certain things that we cannot do because they're illegal. And if we do, there's consequences. I like to say, if you find yourself face to face with the police officers because of your actions, the train is at the last stop. This is it. The buck stops with the police. That's the way it has to be, because what if it's not, what happens? So police have always had the right to win conflict decisively. If you come at a police officer with your fists, there is nothing that should be in the rules that says the police officer has to box you, has to go fisticuffs, fist to fist with you. This isn't designed to be a fair fight. This isn't designed to be a boxing ring with rule. There are no rules as far as the fairness of a fight. If you come at a police officer with your fist, he can strike you with a baton. He can use a taser. You come at the police officer with a bat. He doesn't have to pull out his baton and you guys fence each other. He could shoot you. There's nothing that says this has to be a fair fight. And we can't expect the people that are keeping the peace and enforcing the laws that we've agreed upon to go out and address each and every threat with exactly the level of force that is being shown to them. When people see use of force by police officers, a lot of times they think of it as retaliatory. I mean, we looked at the University of Miami. She slaps this cop and he punches her and knocks her out. And you think, oh, she hit him, so he hit her back. But that's not the reason for the use of force. Why is it the police officer is using force? Well, there's multiple things that are accomplished by this. Number one, she could very well have injured him. She could be wearing a wedding ring, her nail. She could hit his eye. She could cause permanent damage to his vision. What if she hit another guest at the football game? What if she hit another officer? What if they dropped her because she hit the officer and she was injured? Or they dropped her on somebody else? There's all kinds of things that are prevented by the officer stopping her assault. The purpose of him hitting her wasn't, you hit me, I hit you back. The purpose of the officer hitting this woman was to stop her from continuing to assault him. And he doesn't have to slap her back. If she slaps him across the face and he knocks her out, that's fair. He's trying to stop the threat. That is the point of the use of force in that instance. Another thing people don't think about is that use of force depends on how many people are there, the circumstances, the distance. There's all kinds of things to take into consideration. Sometimes people with a knife are have a taser used against them, and sometimes they're shot. The rule is you don't want to bring a taser to a knife fight. If I'm the only police officer on scene and somebody has a knife, I'm not going to take the chance that the taser misses, that it doesn't have the effect that it should. I am trying to stop this person from attacking me. And what has the biggest probability of stopping them? Because if I choose a taser and I'm all alone against a person with a knife and it doesn't work, the cost is my life. We can and shouldn't expect our police officers to wager their lives in order to not hurt somebody who's presenting an active threat against police. But if there's multiple police officers there, typically one will have a gun, and then the other officers can then try a taser, because if the taser doesn't work, the officer with the gun has the backup. But you can't do both. So it depends on how many police officers are there. That's something you have to take into consideration. And when police officers are using force, if you're going to hit somebody, you want to hit them the least amount of times as possible, and you want your hit to stop them from what they're doing. So you should make sure it's hard enough to have an effect. It even looks worse on camera if you're going to sit there and punch somebody 30 times in the head trying to get them to comply versus hitting them one really good time and they go unconscious and you're able to handcuff them as a police officer. So you have to think about the level of force, and you have to know your own strength, obviously. But when police use force, it needs to count. But most of the controversy in police incidents comes in with deadly use of force, which is involving the handgun in most instances. And everybody's heard the expression shoot to kill. Shoot to kill, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. It's not shoot to kill. It's shoot to stop. You're shooting to stop this person from actively assaulting you or somebody else, or they're about to assault you or somebody else, and they pose a significant threat of serious bodily injury or death to you or somebody else. That's when deadly force is allowed most of the time. Some states have allowances for deadly force being used to prevent the escape of somebody who's committed a felony with the use of a deadly weapon. We can get into all that, but I'm just talking generally here about the use of a handgun. So it's not shoot to kill, it's shoot to stop. You're shooting to stop the actions of this person. Now you think about this. If somebody is coming at you, think about how wildly your arms and legs can move. They're difficult. I mean, you can move your arm all over the place and your legs as they're running, and they're skinny targets and they're moving. That's difficult to hit. And even if I do hit you in the arms or legs, what does it have the highest probability of stopping you? Probably not. You can be shot in the arm or the leg and continue to carry out an assault against a police officer. The reason why police officers shoot in center mass or for the head is because it has the highest probability of stopping you from doing what you're doing. And the center of your body moves left and right a little bit, but it can't flail all over the place like a limb can. Again, the officer is wagering his life. If he tries to shoot you in the arms or legs, the probability of the officer sustaining significant injury or death goes way up when he tries to hit you in the arms and legs. And we shouldn't be expecting our police officers to wager their lives. Their lives are already at risk. We shouldn't be expecting them to, well, take the chance. You know what I mean? Just take the chance. Shoot the gun out of someone's hand. This isn't the movies. You can't do that. And the probability of that succeeding is really low. And when it doesn't succeed, the officer potentially pays with his or her life. That's why you are shooting for center mass and the head. That's why you don't shoot the gun out of someone's hands. There's a thing officers are taught called the 21-foot rule with regards to edged weapons or knives. And I don't think a lot of people understand this either. But let me read this to you so you know exactly. It was a study done back in the 80s. And it was formulated by timing subjects beginning their headlong run from a dead stop on a flat surface, offering good traction. The officer standing there, stationary on the same plane, with his or her sidearm in the holster and the holster snapped in. It was documented that the time it takes for the officer to perceive the threat, draw the weapon, aim, fire, and most importantly for the suspect to stop was 21 feet. In other words, if the suspect was within 21 foot of the officer and those circumstances existed, the officer's still going to get stabbed. Even if he shoots the suspect as he's right on top of him, he's still able to carry out the stabbing. 21 feet is a long way away. Now, you use that as a guideline. Because if somebody's 5 feet away and they already have your gun, they already have their knife out, you're at an extreme disadvantage. If you already have your gun out, that changes the whole 21-foot rule. But it's an interesting study to know about as a citizen. Because when I learned that, I thought, I can't believe it. I really can't. It doesn't sound right when you hear that. You think, no, for sure, you could get your gun out and shoot this person because a gun has a significant advantage against a knife, but it doesn't. When I was brand new, I was in District 3, which was the nice area of town, and I was responding to a domestic, and I got there first, and I went up to the apartment. I'm waiting for the cover car, but I'm outside I'm listening outside the door because typically want to do that in here if anything's going on, and it sounded pretty bad inside, and so I was going to get ready to go in by myself because it sounded like this woman was in serious distress, but I got on the radio real quick and, just called for emergency cover. And just as I let go of the button, I didn't even have to kick the door in. The door opens up, the woman comes running into the hall, and I step into the doorway. My gun's already drawn, and I look, and the guy is running after her with one of those really long serrated knives with like the shark tooth on the tip of it. I mean, like a 12, 14-inch knife over his head at a run. And I mean, he was probably, he's probably like 14 feet away from me, closing. And the 21-foot rule. Now, I'm not holstered and he's not at a dead stop and all this, but the point is that I got problems. That's going to be close, even though I have my gun out. That could potentially be close. That could be a stabbing for me. And I bring my gun up higher. I mean, I was absolutely did not expect to see that. The last thing I expected to see. And I bring my gun up, and just as I did, he sees me. And thankfully, this guy drops to his knees, throws the knife, puts his hands above his head, and is just surrendering. And I mean, I'm just thinking, like, I wouldn't have even had time to say, like, stop, police, freeze. I don't even think I would have had. By the time that sentence would have been out of my mouth, I'm stabbed. I don't think a lot of people understand that that's the situation. And had I had to shoot that guy, and I did my interview, they could have said, "Did you say stop, police, freeze, any of that?" No, why not? Because I didn't have time. I didn't have time. The guy was 12, 14 feet away at a dead sprint with a knife over his head. I don't know what to tell you. There was no time to talk. Here's what scares me about use of force policies now. Police departments across the nation are changing their use of force policies to use words like proportional. Oh, police officers should use the amount of force proportional to what they're facing. Well, bullshit. I believe these departments are making these policies. And by the way, my police department changed things. Like they gave us the tasers. And at first, you could use a taser if somebody was just not complying with you. And then they said, well, okay, then, people that were high on cocaine were very rarely. I mean, but once in a great while, somebody who's high on cocaine was dying after being tased. So then it's like, okay, well, we're not going to use the tasers anymore. Now you have to have an active threat of an assault before you can use the taser. So you have to know, if I just say, put your hands on your head and you say, no, I can't taser you, at least in the department I was from. I mean, different departments have different regulations. But if I say, put your hands on your head and you say, no, I can pepper spray you. Why would I want to do that? You think, well, that's not appropriate. Of course it is. Because the only thing that I stand to gain potentially from going hands-on with you is we could both get hurt. You could take my gun. Sometimes it's safer to pepper spray people. But you have to know what threshold you can use, what use of force. And police departments all across the nation are raising the thresholds at which certain uses of force can be used. And it's going to result in injuries to officers and people. Police departments shouldn't have to use force proportional to what do not use that word in a use of force policy. It's ridiculous. Because I don't think that's the issue. Let me tell you what I think the issue is. Police departments need to lay out their expectations. Now, I would like to say that these expectations have been the same for years and years and years. But we don't talk about them. We don't reiterate them. And I've talked about this in my recent articles at stevewarnicki.com. I talked about this in the Miami Beach shooting podcast that I did. There are things police departments can and should do that will make their use of force better. And rather than risking injury to police officers and citizens by raising the threshold and using words like proportional, police departments and laws, all they have to do is lay out their expectations. And here's the expectations. If you slap a police officer across the face, expect to be knocked out. Expect to be pepper sprayed. Expect to be hit with a baton. Expect to be tasered. There was a recent video of an officer who had his baton taken, who was being beaten with his own baton. The police department needs to come out and say, if you take an officer's baton and hit him with it, expect to be shot. You can expect to face gunfire if you do that. Police departments can come out and say, if you confront police with an edged weapon, you will most likely face gunfire. If you are wrestling with the police and you've got your hands underneath you and you've just committed a crime and potentially you have a weapon, expect to be punched in the face until you surrender. These are things that we can agree to. And then when it happens, we don't have to be up in arms about it. We can go, let's kind of agree to that. You slapped a police officer in the face, so you got knocked out. Doesn't matter if you're a woman. Doesn't matter if it's a male cop and a woman. Doesn't matter if it's a female cop and a man. Doesn't matter what race you are. This is what you can expect. If you jump on an officer's back and start choking him, expect to be shot. by his partner. Expect to be hit in the head, which is considered deadly force, with a baton. When there's a use of force incident, particularly like the University of Miami one, the Miami-Dade Police Department can come out and say, if you slap one of our officers, be prepared to be knocked out. And you're going to face charges. You don't just get knocked out and then we send you home, an eye for an eye. You're going to get knocked out and you're going to face charges of assaulting a police officer. Now, in the University of Miami case, the officer should have had her handcuffed. But just because the officers didn't have her handcuffed doesn't excuse the fact that a grown woman decided to actively assault a police officer. That is a training issue. Just because something could have been prevented by police tactics doesn't mean what she did was not against the law, or that somehow she's not culpable for her actions because it could have been prevented. Police departments are constantly evaluating their tactics to reduce instances like that. So this police department should go back and say, listen, when we're removing people from the stands of a sporting event and there's 3 of you, let's get them in handcuffs and then pull them out. Or if you don't have time, sometimes it's dangerous to handcuff them around all their friends because you can get in a fight with all their friends. There's certain escorting techniques that you can do that restrict the movement, especially when there's multiple officers there, where you can restrict the movement by the arms. Let's do so, and then you train the department. We're going to show you some handcuffing. We'd like you to handcuff them if you don't feel like it's safe to handcuff them because there's a big crowd or it's a riotous crowd or something like that. And you just need to get them out of there. Here are some escort techniques rather than carrying her above your head with her hands free so she can slap you in the face. But that doesn't make the officer's use of force invalid or unjust. So I hope I've given you something to think about that's out of the realm of your normal perception of things and out of Hollywood and out of TV and cop shows and all that, that's real life, that you can say now when you look at these situations and these topics come up later in conversation, you are armed with knowledge to speak intelligently about these types of things because they're all across the news. And hopefully you've learned something today. It was a lot of fun to talk about it with you. We look forward to hearing from you at stevewarnicki.com. Articles, podcasts, and more. Get a copy of From Boy to Blue also at Amazon. We'll see you next time.